What's up guys? In the next few videos, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what my plan is going forward in 2022. And a lot of it is around this concept of whether I want to scale or whether I want to stay small as a business. So today, I want to look at the pros and cons of staying as a small-time blogger writing your own content or scaling to become an online publisher. I think that I've done both in recent years. So when I started out, I was writing a lot of my own content, and then around about middle of last year, I started really scaling to the point where I had 18 writers and one editor who I was paying every single month. So I want to go through the pros and cons of each of them from my experiences, and I think a lot of this has to do with what is your personality. Personally, I think my personality is more towards the blogger side, and that has a lot to do with why I went into this in the first place. So let's get started. So when I started out as a blogger, one of the things that really appealed to me about this online business method was that I didn't have a boss, I could be left alone. My life was really laid back, which is all I wanted. I'd go out for coffee every morning, I'd go out for a beer of an afternoon, I'd do all of my work on my laptop around the city, and I was really happy with the way things were going. At the time, I wasn't making that much money, maybe between $6,000 and $10,000 a month most months. And at the time, something that was really gratifying to me was that I left this gross corporate atmosphere where I had a boss and I had to be at work at a certain time, and I was always answering emails and replying to everyone, and I'd found this sort of zen of making as much money as I would have made, but I've got no responsibilities. It was amazing, and maybe I'm looking back at that a little bit nostalgically because I was writing content every day, but actually I really like writing content every day, so I wouldn't mind going back to that. And then around about the middle of last year, I started making good money with my blogs and I started reinvesting. The reason I reinvested was because I wanted to get to $100,000 a month and then sell my portfolio for $4 million, and then I could sit back for the rest of my life, put that money in index funds, and not have anything to worry about. I realized the gap between, making $15,000 a month and $100,000 a month involved a lot of hard work and a lot of scaling and eventually becoming more of a manager than anything. So toward the end of last year, I had 18 writers on staff, I had one editor, these were all freelancers, and most of my job was supposed to be doing keyword research. It didn't really turn out like that though, which is why I've done a couple little changes, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. Okay, so let's look at the pros and cons of being a blogger versus an online publisher. Where I'm saying a blogger is just one person writing their own blog and just slowly grinding away to build up that income. For me, it was really laid back. And I know a lot of people who don't like writing would just absolutely despise this and they'd have to go the online publisher route. But for me, I really liked waking up every day and just writing an article. On the other hand, last year when I had a lot of writers on my hands and an editor, I found that I'd become a manager. My fun little blog had suddenly become a job, and I was every single day managing people day in, day out. To the point where my girlfriend in November last year said to me, "Chris, you quit a corporate job because you hated the stress of it and you hated the hard work of it and you hated the responsibility of it, and you're back in that mindset again. What the hell happened? Why don't you just go back to just writing your own blog posts? It's way less stressful for you. There are so many more benefits of doing that for your own personality." And I totally agree with her. Going back to the next line, we've got being a blogger, there are no deadlines, whereas being an online publisher, there are daily tasks with daily deadlines. I went into it thinking, look, I'm just going to outsource everything and then a lot of it's off my plate. The problem with that is, unless you want to hire a really good quality manager for everything, you have to step in a lot to do a lot of the middleman work. Maybe I didn't achieve that. Maybe I wasn't successful in scaling, but I found the more complex my business got, the more I had to intervene all the time, whether or not I had people in place who were supposed to do those tasks. The next one was income potential, and this is the one that I think that's the reason most people want to become an online publisher with a lot of a staff underneath them as opposed to a blogger. There is probably a lower income potential being a blogger than an online publisher. An online publisher, you're writing 200 articles a month and you're getting all of that outsourced so you can pump out as much content as possible. You're scaling. Whereas for a blogger, you're probably only going to be able to get 30, maybe if you're lucky, 50 articles a month out onto your blog. You can't scale as well. Having said that, I'm sure there are hundreds of people on AdThrive who are just one woman writing about her homestead or her recipes or something, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So I don't think that this is necessarily true, but I can see the logic behind the higher income potential of being an online publisher. Look at John Dykstra, for example. He's pumping out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles per month. And he is, undoubtedly, he's not a blogger. He is like an online publisher. He's the manager of a publishing business. So another thing that I really like about just being a blogger by myself is the quality of content. When I started doing the outsourcing method and getting a lot of other people to write my content, and even when I had an editor on hand to also edit it, and I mean, I appreciate all my writers and I appreciate my editor, and they all did a good job, but at the same time, it's never going to be the quality that it would be if I did it myself. And I was constantly on the back of a lot of my writers being like, look, the quality is dropping every single time you send me content. I need you to maintain that higher quality. And that happens with a lot of writers. They kind of, after a couple of months, the quality does decrease. Going back to being a blogger on the next line, I liked the idea of having no boss and no employees. Whereas with an online publisher, I was constantly having to manage people, whether it was my writers, whether it was my editors, constant managing of people. Constantly looking at content and being like, this isn't good enough. We need to go back and fix it. We need to go and change it. And maybe that's me having a really high standard of quality. But, I really got to a point where I was like, I don't feel as if this quality is befitting of like, I can't publish this. This isn't good enough quality. Or I did publish it, but I kind of went, this is just a content mill now. The quality goes down with the more hires you have, especially if you're not going to pay them very much. Last one, being a blogger means you get to keep your money. You keep every cent that comes to you because you are the person who's writing it. You're the personality. You're the face of the website. You don't have to give money to anyone. Whereas online publishing, you're reinvesting your money into paying freelancers constantly to keep growing and growing and growing and growing this content mill essentially that you've created. The main reason I went to the online publishing model was because I had this money and I needed to reinvest it to grow the income potential. But when I got to that point where I was doing it, I was kind of like, I'm reinvesting this money. Sure, the sites that I'm making are making like $3,000 a month, for example, but is it really the sort of content that I enjoy creating? Do I feel like I've gone to bed at the end of the night as if I've had a creative day? It doesn't have the same satisfaction as when I sit down and I craft a really good article and I publish that on my website. I end that day satisfied. I finish the day, I go for a walk or I go and have a beer or something, and I'm stoked that I had a good day where I created something valuable with my mind and put it online and it looks great. I'm really satisfied with that. So at the end of the day, I think it has a lot to do with personalities. My personality is that I'm a creative person who doesn't like to have deadlines or responsibilities or anything. My personality points me towards I can be a blogger, not an online publisher. If you hate writing and you just want basically to create an online publishing business that's going to be a job, that's going to be a chore, you're going to be the manager of that business, but you still prefer that over whatever job you're doing now, well, maybe you want to go the online publisher route. But to me, it's not as fun, it's not as creative, it's not something that I'm particularly interested in anymore. So here's what I'm doing going forward. I've gotten rid of most of my writers. I still have a few, but I've gotten rid of most of them to the extent where it's really quite manageable with one editor, 3 writers, and it's a lot more self-contained so that they handle nearly everything and I don't have to intervene as much because it's not that many people. There's not as many moving parts. So I can reinvest my money into a small little project on the side that's not going to suck up my time. So I can spend 29 out of the 30 days of the month focusing on other things like hanging out with my family or working on my blog because I still want to write as much content as possible. So I'm aiming to be more like if it's a spectrum, I could put my head all the way down closer toward the blogger end of the spectrum, not the whole way because I've still got 4 hires, but I'm more towards the low stress, not that many people, not having to send out all of my money every single month to hire content. So I can focus most of my time on building my brand and writing my own content while also reinvesting, maybe $5,000 a month instead of $15,000 a month. I'm also thinking, well, how am I going to be able to scale as quick? Do I have to give up my $100,000 a month dream? Maybe I do, but maybe not. We'll see. I'm doing a real sniper approach to my keyword research for one of my sites now, the one that I'm writing the content for, but I know the articles that are going to rank well. I know that they'll rank well because I'm writing high quality content, or at least I hope I am. I think that I am. So it's even content that I've been holding on to because I didn't want to give it to writers because it was too important that I would write it because I knew the content better or I needed the quality to be maintained or something. So I'm really snipering on articles that I think each article will bring me in 30 or 40 bucks a month. And hopefully by doing that, I can still continue to grow with less content, but getting more money per article out because I'm writing high quality content that should rank better. The other thing is I get to focus more. I can focus harder on building my brand because I'm not constantly being distracted by all these other smaller portfolio sites that aren't my passion sites. They're just sort of ways to reinvest my money. So I can focus now on building out my passion brand website and not have all these other distractions. And you'll see in the next couple of videos that come out on this channel, I'm talking about case studies like the niche site Cagefight and the Race to $5,000 case study that I did last year that was supposed to be small side projects where I hired an editor and writer to work on them. And I'm kind of stopping those projects or changing them up a little bit so I can keep my focus on being a blogger for 80% of my days and only managing things as little as possible because that's what makes me happiest. So at the end of the day, it's got a lot to do with personalities. My personality, I just want to be laid back. I want to write a couple of articles, have a coffee, and enjoy my days. So do I think it's going to work out? I actually think even if I don't make as much money, I'll be a lot happier now going back to being a blogger rather than an online publisher. You, of course, have to make up your own mind about what is going to make you happiest.